You felt this strange weight for a long time, as if a whisper had taken up residence inside you, a voice that cannot be silenced. It doesn't scream, doesn't demand. It simply exists, cold and patient, like morning fog creeping over warm earth. You can't quite explain what's happening, but deep down you already know there's a pattern. It repeats endlessly, certain women, certain behaviors, certain tragedies unfolding in the same script, like an eternal cycle no one seems able to escape. They cling to childish fantasies like a drowning soul clutching driftwood, waiting for the world to step in and save them, for someone to take their hand, shield them from the winds, and pave a path through the chaos. But when salvation doesn't come, the illusion shatters, and behind it lies a brutal truth: the world never promised protection. Then comes the breaking point, the cry, the tears, the destruction. Some rage, lashing out at everything and everyone for their pain. Others break quietly, like a glass vase falling onto soft carpet. But the essence is the same: energy depleted. The light that once warmed now flickers out, leaving only cold ash and vacant stares. You feel it too, don't you? Not just in others, but within yourself. This isn't about blame or judgment. It's about finally opening your eyes to the chains binding the feminine soul for centuries. Because immaturity isn't weakness. It's a prison forged from fear, inherited from mothers, grandmothers, and all those who came before. But before you rush to dismiss these words, pause, feel them. Because if you're reading this, your soul is already preparing to confront the truth. You are still here. You are listening, even as something inside you resists, trying desperately to silence this voice, because every cell within you has learned to defend itself, and that defense feels natural, almost like an inseparable part of your being. But let me tell you the truth. Immaturity is not your nature. It is a prison, constructed from fear. It is not random, not chaotic. It was built as an ancient mechanism flawlessly operating across centuries. This is not weakness. This is strategy. The deep feminine psyche, shaped by centuries in a world where strength often invited danger and fragility promised privilege, learned to erect fortresses around its fears. These fortresses are made of habits, roles, archetypes. They are passed down like an old code, flowing through generations, seeping into your blood, your breath, your very soul. Carl Jung spoke of archetypes that rule our shadow. The feminine shadow is especially multifaceted. It hides behind faces that seem innocent, alluring, or powerful. Yet behind every mask lies the same fear. Fear of being forgotten, unseen, abandoned, unprotected. There is the archetype of the girl. She appears tender, fragile, defenseless. She waits for the world to warm her, for someone to take her hand and whisper, "You are safe." But the girl does not understand. The world never promised rescue. Her tears are no longer pure expressions of pain, but tools that halt the flow of responsibility. She cries instead of speaking. She manipulates instead of negotiating, yet behind that fragile mask lies a deep wound too afraid to meet your gaze. There is the princess. Here immaturity stops pleading and starts demanding. The princess believes she deserves love, success, and happiness simply for existing. She imagines the world must endlessly shower her with gifts, expecting nothing in return. No effort, no sacrifice, no growth. But when the world falls silent, when the silver platter does not appear, rage rises in her chest. Resentment poisons her perception. Reality becomes a traitor who broke promises it never made. There is the wife. At first glance, she seems more mature, capable of enduring, of adapting, of dissolving herself into another. But this dissolution is not the mark of mature love. It is the fear of being alone, the terror of facing the vastness of her own autonomy. She accepts the rules of others simply to avoid the void of self-reliance. And finally, there is the sorceress. Here, the mask of fragility is discarded. Now she wields cunning, manipulation, and emotional power. She no longer seeks love. She craves control. She orchestrates others as deftly as a seasoned magician commands the elements. But here, too, lies a cruel paradox. She herself remains a captive, shackled by the fear that once made her trade vulnerability for dominance. Do you recognize these faces? Perhaps they gaze back at you from your past, in your mother, your grandmother, a friend, or perhaps their outlines are beginning to emerge in your own reflection. This is not a cause for blame. It is an opportunity to see your chains you have worn for so long they now feel like part of your skin. Understand this, these archetypes are not your enemies. Once they were your guardians. The girl shielded your heart from pain. The princess gave you hope. The wife saved you from loneliness. The sorceress helped you survive a ruthless world, but today their magic no longer works. Today these roles are anchors keeping you in the waters of fear. And now the question stands before you. Will you dare to lower your shield? Are you ready to stand bare without masks, without scripts, without illusions? Because maturity begins the moment you stop being one of them. And this path is far from safe, but it is the only path that leads to freedom. You can feel the air grow heavier as I speak this word, the girl. It sounds tender, almost innocent, yet there's a strange weight hidden in its depths. You see her in yourself or in others, the image of a fragile, defenseless soul ready to burst into tears at any moment. Her small hands reach out to the world for comfort, for protection, for the promise that everything will be okay. But the world remains silent. The girl believes someone must always come. She waits for a parent in the body of a man, a savior in the face of a boss, a magical angel in the guise of a friend. She waits for the world to care, for someone to lift the burden of responsibility she deems too heavy to bear. She cries instead of speaking. Her tears are not just pain, they are a tool, unconscious yet effective. Tears stop the flow of questions, gently compelling others to lean in, to save, to carry her weight. She knows no other strategy. Deep within her lies an ancient conviction. Fragility is power. The world should love her for her tenderness. The world should forgive her weaknesses. The world owes her the protection of her delicate heart from every storm. But what happens when the world is indifferent, when no one comes? Then the girl breaks, not outwardly but inwardly. Her gaze turns glassy, her hands fall helplessly, her voice dies in her throat. You feel it, don't you? Remember the moments when you long to hide behind someone's back, to hand your decisions over to another, to pretend everything was too complex. This is not an accusation. It is the truth that millions of women before you have lived with. The immaturity of the girl is not a sin. It is programming. It was born in an age when a woman's fate depended on the strength of her father, brother, husband. She learned to survive by making herself needed through her fragility. Then it made sense. Then it saved lives. But today this role makes you a prisoner. As long as you remain the girl, you do not govern your life. You wait for others to decide, for someone to reach out and lead you out of the darkness. But the longer you wait, the more fears entangle you. The world never promised kindness. It never vowed to protect you. This truth stings, but it is the very truth that opens the door to maturity. Remove this mask. Feel the weight of your own life in your hands. It is frightening. It is unfamiliar. But only then can you begin building your reality instead of wandering in childish fantasies of a savior. The girl within you will not vanish immediately. She will scream, demand, cry, beg you to return to old roles. But if you choose not to yield, for the first time in your life you will feel what it means to be an adult. Not a pretend adult, not a woman playing a role, but a real one. You can feel the air shifting. The silence grows thicker, heavier, almost suffocating. That's because we are nearing a more dangerous, more deceptive image, the princess. She is harder to recognize, for her mask is exquisite, alluring, adorned with golden promises and dreams. But beneath the glitter lies the same wound, the same fear, only now dressed in the robes of a sovereign. The princess does not ask, she demands. She lives with the deep conviction that the world owes her by birthright. She is certain her beauty, her softness, her very femininity are enough to grant her everything: love, validation, success, without effort, without pain, without growth. In her world, reality is meant to conform to her expectations. People should anticipate her desires before she even speaks them. Fate must spread itself before her like a carpet woven of precious threads. But when this does not happen, when life proves stubborn and unyielding, A rage ignites within her. It is hot, sticky, all-consuming. Reality becomes her enemy. Everyone around her becomes guilty. The world betrayed her. You have seen this. A woman blaming men, society, parents, past relationships, destiny, even the stars, anyone but herself. She does not realize her expectations, raised to the heavens, crumble not because the world is cruel, but because she surrendered her power to them. The princess clings to the myth of rescue. She unconsciously seeks authority figures to replace her father, a man to bear the weight of her choices, a boss to understand her without words, a friend to stay by her side through every storm. But these figures never come, and the princess feels rage and despair. Her kingdom collapses. She says, "I deserve more." But what lies behind these words? The fear of admitting no one owes her anything, the terror of seeing herself without a throne, without a crown, without the golden glow. Do you recognize this pain? Perhaps in others, perhaps in yourself. This is not an accusation, it is a mirror. Look into it, even if its gaze burns. For as long as the princess rules your inner world, you will live in constant conflict with reality. And reality does not fight, it simply exists, indifferent to our titles and roles. Ask yourself, how much energy have you wasted on resentment, on expectations, on trying to bend life into the shape of your fantasies? How many times have you felt betrayed when people failed to become heroes in your story? It is time to remove the crown. It weighs more than you think. And as long as you wear it, you cannot hear your true self. The princess within will resist. She will scream that without her you are nothing. She will whisper that the world is cruel and owes you care. But if you dare to shed this role, the world will open in its raw, terrifying beauty. And you will see for the first time, no one is coming to save you. No one has to. And in that truth lies a strange, unsettling freedom. Here begins the path to maturity. You feel it approaching, like a cold wind carrying the scent of rain and storms. There's no more naivety of the girl here, no soft illusions of the princess. Here begins something both terrifying and mesmerizing, the archetype of the sorceress. This is the shadow that has stopped waiting for rescue. She has realized, if no one is coming, the world must be seized and bent to her will. The sorceress does not cry. She does not ask or plead. She watches, calculates, weaves her delicate threads like a spider in the corner of a dim room. Her weapon is manipulation. Her language is suggestion. Her power lies in directing the desires of others for her own ends. She no longer seeks love. She no longer craves the warmth of another's heart. She craves power. Once, her fragility was a shield. Now the shield has become a sword. The sorceress understands how the world works. She reads people, sees their weaknesses, uses their fears. She has mastered the art of controlling emotions, not to protect herself, but to ensure no one comes close enough to wound her again. But if you peer beneath this icy mask of strength, you will find a familiar fear. The same ancient terror of being unprotected that once gave rise to the girl and the princess. Only now it is so skillfully concealed beneath cold calculation that even the sorceress herself no longer recognizes its presence. She builds illusions. She may appear to be the perfect woman, confident, mysterious, invincible. But in her silence echoes the sound of loneliness. Her power is not freedom but a gilded cage. The more she controls, the less chance she has to see her true self. Do you recognize these signs? Perhaps you once wore this mask. Perhaps it still hovers near, ready to return if the world feels too dangerous. But you must understand, this strength is false. It is a defense that has turned into a trap. The sorceress fears love because love demands vulnerability. She fears truth because truth destroys her carefully constructed games. She fears reality because in the real world, control is an illusion. But how long can you hide? How long can you spin webs in which you yourself become ensnared? True strength is born not in controlling others, but in taking full responsibility for your life, without masks, without tricks, without using other people's emotions as fuel. Remove this mask. Let the cold fear flood through you like an icy river. Feel it, live it. Only then will you be able to square your shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, breathe deeply. It will not be easy, but freedom never comes to those who continue hiding behind the illusion of control. You think this is only about you? Only about your pain, your choices, your fears. But if you allow yourself to see wider, to push back the walls of your personal story, it becomes clear. This is far more than an individual drama. This is the fabric of an entire civilization, stitched with centuries of conditioning, fears, and traditions, woven into the feminine psyche like invisible threads. Remember how, for centuries, women were taught to be obedient, soft, uncomplaining. Across cultures, girls were raised with one message. Their true power lay in submission, their influence in fragility, their worth in pleasing others, to be a good daughter, to be a good wife, to be a good mother, to be convenient. They were taught to smile even when their hearts were breaking, to stay silent when their pain demanded to be screamed, to depend on a man because a woman standing alone provoked fear and contempt. They were taught that tears and weakness were weapons that could hold a protector close. These lessons passed from generation to generation, like heirlooms too precious or too heavy to set aside. Girls absorbed them with their mother's milk, in fairy tales where princesses waited for rescue, in stories where a woman without a man was considered incomplete. But the world has changed. Today there are no fortress walls to hide behind, no fathers choosing for daughters, no husbands dictating a wife's destiny. Women have gained a freedom their ancestors could never have imagined. They can choose, create, and shape their lives. And yet, the inner script remains unchanged. Deep within the psyche, on a level rarely touched by consciousness, the old code still whispers, "You will be safe if you stay weak." This code has become a program, launching automatically whenever the world feels too harsh. Do you feel it echo within you? In moments when you want to retreat, to hand responsibility over to someone stronger, to become small, fragile, loved simply for existing. This is the voice of centuries, the voice of women who could not do otherwise because otherwise meant death. But you live in a different age, and this script no longer works. Weakness no longer guarantees protection. Fragility no longer promises love. Obedience no longer brings respect. The old world has vanished, yet the program lingers like phantom pain, like a shadow from the past that still governs the present. Now you stand on a threshold. Before you are two paths. One leads to continuing the old script, hoping someone stronger will take your life into their hands. The other demands you shed the burden of centuries-old dependence and meet reality face to face. It is terrifying because the new role is unwritten. It feels like stepping into a void with no instructions, no guarantees, no supports already in place. But it is there, in that void, that maturity is born. There you will meet yourself, not as a daughter, not as a wife, not as someone's shadow, but as a woman strong enough to be her own foundation. Everything before this moment was only preparation. Words about fear, about old scripts, about shadow archetypes. They were merely a soft loosening of your inner walls. But now comes the truth. Growing up always demands a sacrifice. And that sacrifice is your illusions. Maturity does not arrive wrapped in gold like a gift. It comes with no ribbons of approval, no easy applause. It comes like cold rain seeping into your bones, like winds strong enough to knock you down. It brings no instant joy, only emptiness, as all the old set pieces crumble around you. At the start of this path, a woman feels betrayed. Betrayed by a society that promised fragility was strength. Betrayed by men who seemed destined to protect and support. Betrayed by life itself, which suddenly demands accountability for every decision, every choice, every ache. Yesterday she was the girl, forgiven for her weakness. Yesterday she was the princess, convinced the world owed her everything. Yesterday she was the sorceress, skilled at mastering the emotions of others. But today these roles no longer save her. They have become narrow cages where breathing is impossible. Now she stands amid the ruins of her old life, where there are no saviors, no villains, no dramatic curtains to hide behind. All is gone. All that remains is her body, her voice, her fear. This is the moment no pretty tale of empowerment dares to show. Here there is no beauty, only pain, doubt, and the cold realization. No one is coming. No one will take her hand. No one will tell her what to do next. Each morning, each step, each mistake, from now on, they are hers alone. In this moment she faces silence, and in the silence she can hear her thoughts tremble. There is no applause, no comforting words, only darkness, where she must learn to stand. Maturity is not a graceful floating above the earth. It is stones in her hands and blood on her palms from clawing her way up a sheer cliff. It is the weight of responsibility pressing her shoulders like iron. It is loneliness because most turn back, unwilling to pay this price. Yet within this pain lies a gift. It is not visible at first. It appears when she chooses for the first time not to cry for pity, when she refuses to blame her parents, her partners, her fate, when she stands, though her knees shake and whispers, then says louder, "This is my life now." She begins to understand that beyond illusions lies not a void, but space, a vastness where she can breathe fully, where she can exist without roles and masks. This is not freedom granted by another. It is freedom earned and deserved with every drop of pain. This is how the adult woman is born, not the one shown in glossy magazines, not the one sung about in songs, but the one who knows everything she has she built herself, and no one can take it away. When the old roles are cast aside, silence descends. But this is not the peaceful silence described in books about spiritual awakening. This is a silence filled with chaos. It presses on the chest, tightens the throat, steals sleep. The woman stands on the threshold of a new life, yet does not know who she has become. All the familiar masks, the girl, the princess, the sorceress, lie shattered at her feet. She can no longer return to them, but moving forward is terrifying. She feels like a stranger in her own body, as if her skin has grown too tight, her voice foreign and hollow. Everything around her seems unreal, the walls of her home, familiar faces, well-trodden paths. The old systems no longer function, the habitual responses have vanished, and no new ones have formed. This is the space between past and future, where no guideposts exist, where every step feels heavy and uncertain. At times it feels as though she is dying, not in body but in identity. The supports vanish, the illusions crumble. What once gave her life meaning, others' attention, external validation, the drama of relationships, now seems like an empty echo. The world that once revolved around her expectations no longer responds. In this emptiness, panic arises. It comes in waves, a hot rush tightening her chest, a cold shiver along her spine. She reaches for anything familiar, old scripts, familiar games, the comfort of external approval, but none of it brings relief anymore. The dependency on the external has disappeared, yet an internal foundation has not yet formed. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into a dark void, realizing there is no way back. She can no longer be who she was, but she has not yet become who she must be. This is the state of the in-between, painful and necessary. From the outside, it might seem she is free, but freedom without identity is terrifying. She does not know who she is without the role of lover, without the role of victim, without the role of the one in control. Her soul screams for a new script, new rules, a new costume to drape over her raw, exposed truth. But there are no new roles. There is only her and her naked self, vulnerable and tender like fresh skin over a burn. In this crisis, many temptations arise. Some women choose to go back, to bow beneath the weight of fear and don their masks again. They return to being the girl or the sorceress, for there, despite the pain, life felt predictable. Others seek comfort in false ideas of liberation, trying to build a new identity on rebellion, on protest, on external defiance. But this, too, is an illusion. It is only a new costume, failing to resolve the inner conflict. Those who remain in the crisis learn to exist without supports. They learn to sit with the pain, not fleeing, not filling the emptiness with borrowed words. They walk through the night of the soul, where there is no light, no stars, no promises, only darkness and breath, only step by uncertain step into the unknown. Over time, they begin to notice a faint light. It does not come from outside. It seeps from within, tentative, uneven like a first fire kindled with bare hands. This is their own strength, once hidden beneath layers of fear and dependency. This light cannot be stolen, cannot be broken, cannot be taken away. It is the only thing that truly belongs to them. The woman who survives this crisis will never again be who she was. She has lost her former self and gained a new one. And though the process feels like death, It is, in fact, a birth, the birth of one who no longer needs costumes or roles to feel her worth. When light begins to seep from within, there comes a realization. The path to maturity is not only about inner freedom, it is also about confronting the darkness that is hidden in the shadows of every old role. This is the darkness few dare to speak of aloud. It is unsettling because it strips away excuses. It reveals immaturity not as a sweet weakness but as a poison that seeps into relationships, into lives, into generations. The woman who remains in the role of the girl or the princess may appear harmless. She cries, complains, waits for help. But beneath this fragility often lies an unconscious sabotage of her own life. She avoids decisions, refuses responsibility, and year after year this strategy becomes increasingly destructive. Immaturity begins to poison the space around her. It shapes her children, embedding the same patterns of dependency and fear. It fractures partnerships because no one can forever be a parent to an adult woman. It transforms love into a battlefield where the weapons are tears, silent treatments, resentments, and manipulation. But there is a darker side still, the one embodied by the sorceress. Here, immaturity ceases to be unconscious. It becomes a choice. The woman learns to wield her weaknesses as bait and others' strengths as resources. She knows exactly how to invoke guilt, how to make another carry her burdens, how to orchestrate relationships so she never has to feel vulnerable. This is no longer defense. It is a deliberate tactic of power. She does not seek a partner. She wants puppets. She does not crave love. She craves validation of her worth through control. And though she may appear confident and powerful, inside remains the same frightened girl, trembling at the thought of facing the world alone. This darkness often goes unnoticed by the woman herself. She considers her actions justified, believing the world is harsh and cunningness essential for survival. She teaches her daughters to hide pain behind smiles, and her sons to serve feminine fragility instead of building relationships based on equality, and so the cycle repeats. But the destructive force of immaturity extends beyond personal lives. It seeps into society. As long as women remain in emotional childhood, they forfeit leadership, their own voices, their right to shape reality. Society continues to reproduce patterns of dependency where feminine strength is diminished and masculine energy becomes either a cold patron or an adversary. True maturity begins where a woman stops playing this game, where she decides to face her darkness and acknowledge it. Not to deny the tears, manipulations, resentments, but to see them for what they are, the results of fear and pain long hidden beneath layers of masks. This is a heavy gaze. It does not flatter. It demands courage to call things by their names, for it is easier to blame the world, men, circumstances, than to admit immaturity can be a sweet poison from which it is so hard to wean. But only through this acknowledgement is transformation possible. Only when a woman owns her darkness can she stop being its prisoner. Then the old roles lose their power, and in their place is born something new, a quiet, unshowy strength that no longer needs masks, tricks, or the approval of others. And now you are here. You have walked through darkness, through loneliness, through the shock of realizing the world owes you nothing. You have removed masks worn for years. You have stared into the face of your own shadow, and it was not a gentle gaze. It cut like shards of glass, like a cold wind slicing to the bone, but you stood your ground, and now before you lies a fork in the road. One path leads back. This is the easiest choice. It calls to you with its familiarity, with its illusions of safety. You can slip back into the girl, waiting for someone stronger to save you from the harshness of life. You can don the crown of the princess and demand gifts from a universe that never promised them. You can become the sorceress again, wielding cunning to manipulate others and avoid your own vulnerability. These roles are familiar. They seduce with their sense of security. But if you return, know you will live within a cage. Every role is a chain. They may be gilded, soft, comforting, but chains nonetheless. You will breathe, but your breaths will be shallow. You will live, but the life will not be your own. The other path leads forward, without masks, without illusions, without costumes to hide behind. It is a road with no guarantees, no pre-built maps. Here every step is a choice, and no one will make it for you. Here there is no place for complaints, for blaming others, for hoping someone will lead you by the hand. Here you stand alone, but for the first time, alone does not mean abandoned. It means free. Can you see this space already? It is frightening because it is empty, but it is in this emptiness that your true self is born. Here you are no longer a daughter of someone else's scripts, no longer a prisoner of others' expectations, no longer a captive of your own shadow. Here you become a woman holding her life in her own hands. And yes, it is a heavy burden. Growing up always demands a price. No one warns you that freedom will feel so sharp, so fragile, so lonely at first. No one says true strength doesn't lift you up, it weighs on you, testing whether you can carry it. But aren't you tired of waiting? Haven't endless cycles of pain and dependency worn you down? How many years have been spent searching for saviors, striving to earn love, playing the victim or the manipulator? Now you stand at the threshold and must ask yourself only one question. Are you ready to carry your life alone? Without blaming, without excuses, without leaning on others to shoulder your fear? The choice is always yours. You can continue playing roles created to control you. Or you can step into the unknown, where everything, your decisions, your mistakes, your triumphs and failures, belong solely to you. Understand this, maturity is not a reward, it is a burden borne only by the strong. But this burden grants you the right to a real life where every breath, every step, every choice is truly yours. And one day when you take that step, you will feel a strange calm. It won't be ecstasy or euphoria. It will be a quiet certainty that you owe nothing to anyone, not the world, not the past, not your fears. You are your own foundation. You are your own path. And now nothing, no force in the universe can take this truth away from you.